welcome to the channel. Here I share scareful stories. Stories to make you scared, make you think, make you wonder, and maybe, just maybe, make you a little more careful. Before we get into the updates, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so now. And later on, if you could give the video a like and leave a comment down below, that would be great. Now, on to a few updates to the scareful stories of Aidan Clune and Dylan Rounds, two teenage boys missing within 100 miles and 4 weeks of each other. Unfortunately, neither boy has been found. A quick review of Aidan's case is that Aidan was in the midst of a mental health crisis when he left his home in Sonoma County, California, and traveled to Utah. He was supposed to stay at his grandmother's home there, but he experienced a lot of paranoia and set out on his own. He spent the night of April 26th at a hotel in Wells, Nevada. The following day, April 27th, Aidan's truck was found abandoned along U.S. Route 93 near Currie, Nevada. Searches for Aidan found tracks leading into the Cherry Creek mountain range in the high desert of Nevada. At times, it was clear he was running, sometimes crawling through bushes, and searchers thought that he was actively hiding from them. Given his mental state and level of paranoia prior to going missing, he may have believed that searchers were out to harm him. Searches are ongoing, albeit fewer and further between than before. There was a search in June which yielded a few clues, and there will be another search for Aidan on July 9th and overnight into July 10th. Hopefully that search will be the search that finally gives Aidan's mom her son back. Anyone with information about Aidan's disappearance should contact the Elko County Sheriff's Office at 775-738-3421. Dylan's case is more complicated because it's unknown exactly when and from where he went missing. Dylan Rounds was last seen on May 26, 2022 at a bar in Montello, Nevada. He spoke to his grandmother on the phone from his farm in Lucin, Utah on the morning of May 28th. He cut the conversation short when it began to rain, and he told his grandma that he needed to get his grain under cover. On May 30th, Dylan's family became concerned when no one had heard from Dylan for a few days. When his family arrived at his farm, they didn't find Dylan, but did find a few things that they found strange. A pair of Dylan's boots were found behind a pile of dirt about 100 yards south of where his grain truck was parked. His parents say that Dylan would wear his boots until they were totally worn out, and then he'd buy another pair in the same style. The boots that were found were not worn out, and so they assumed that they were the boots Dylan was wearing that day. Something I found interesting, though, was that in an interview, Dylan's dad said that the boots were found near an old junk hole where they'd burn trash and stuff. So, is it possible that despite the condition of the boots, Dylan had thrown them there days or even weeks prior as trash? Or did someone put the boots there after hurting Dylan, thinking they would return later to burn them? But in that case, why just the boots and none of Dylan's other belongings? Dylan's parents also thought that a few things about Dylan's truck were odd. First, it was locked, and they say that Dylan never locked his truck. His mom thought that the truck appeared to have been pressure washed, and that despite the rain over the weekend, there was no mud on the tires. The front seat was pulled forward, too far forward for Dylan, who is 5'11". And lastly, the truck was in four-wheel drive despite that feature not working, so Dylan would not have set it that way. For reference too, the truck was found at the RV where Dylan lived, which is about 5 miles from where the grain truck had been put into a shelter. If it was starting to rain like Dylan told his grandmother and he needed to get his grain under cover, you would assume he didn't walk 5 miles to do that. If he drove his truck, either Dylan or someone else drove the truck back to the RV. Remember that the boots were found near the grain truck. Dylan's wallet, car keys, and phone are missing. Searches for Dylan have failed to turn up new clues. The Box Elder County Sheriff's Office continues to investigate with help from the Elko County Sheriff's Office and also from the FBI. There has been a lot of focus on a few individual people related to Dylan's case. Some are residents of the area and another is a private investigator. Investigators have questioned several people regarding Dylan's disappearance. One was arrested due to having an outstanding warrant in a different state, and another, James Brenner, has been charged with 1 count of possessing a firearm while being a felon, a charge unrelated to Dylan's disappearance. It's unknown if any useful information was discovered from these individuals related to Dylan's case, but the criminal complaint filed against Brenner says that he was squatting in a trailer that was on land near the area where Dylan would have gone to move his grain truck. The trailer was searched by the FBI on June 16th. So it doesn't look like Jim will be going anywhere anywhere but to prison anytime soon. He's an interesting person as relates to the case because in some reports it said that he was always around, but then on Saturday, when presumably Dylan went missing, he was off the property for a stretch of time. Jim was the person who would have opened a locked gate to let Dylan onto the land where the grain truck was. Jim says he didn't see Dylan that Saturday. He also never sounded the alarm about Dylan not being around, which I suppose it's possible that he just didn't see anything out of the ordinary and didn't realize that Dylan wasn't there. Like so often happens in cases like this, small town rumors have become the topic of much discussion, and online sleuths have really taken up the cause and are digging deep into what could have possibly happened to Dylan. Clearly, I have this channel, so I understand the fascination people have with these cases, but at the same time, I feel people need to be a little careful because rumors and theories have a way of spinning out of control. Dylan's grandparents hired James Terry, a private investigator, to try and find out what happened to their grandson. James has done numerous interviews in which he claims that Dylan was involved with the militia group that would do patrols at night looking for people trespassing, possibly stealing or committing other crimes. He has also made statements about what percentage of the area's population are convicted sex offenders, and it said that he had people report to him that Dylan was gay and involved with a much older man, Curtis Wadsworth. Dylan's parents deny all of what Terry has said. They have sent Terry a cease and desist letter demanding that he stop any and all involvement in Dylan's case. They accuse him of making many incorrect statements about Dylan and the investigation. Dylan's parents claim that Terry's words are damaging the integrity and effectiveness of the entire investigation. For his part, Terry claims to have not been officially served with the letter. There has been quite a bit of focus on Curtis Wadsworth. Kurt lives in Montello, Nevada, and says that he was a friend of Dylan's. He had helped Dylan at times as a backhoe operator, and Dylan would sometimes stay at a trailer Kurt owns, although Kurt says that they didn't stay there together. Instead, Dylan would sometimes crash there. Kurt only uses the trailer as a place to crash when he wants to stay in town, and it is not his primary residence. In an interview, Curtis supposedly claimed that not only did he have nothing to do with Dylan's disappearance, but that he would also be the person to solve the mystery. He then is quoted as saying, "I know everything about Dylan. They know absolutely nothing about Dylan's life," which all that sounds great, but then apparently he kept talking, and when asked if he hoped Dylan would be found, he said, "Nah, if nothing else, just to rub people's face in it. I am going to get in their face," meaning he is going to get in the faces of those who are accusing him of having something to do with Dylan's disappearance. What kind of person claims to be such a good friend to someone that they know more about him than anyone else, but then goes on to say that he hopes his missing friend is never found just out of spite? If anything, Dylan being found would presumably prove that Kurt wasn't involved, right? There's some dispute about if the quotes are totally accurate, and from the parts of an interview I heard with Kurt, he sounded genuinely concerned for Dylan. Terry, the private investigator, cast some suspicion not just on Kurt, but also on his brother Troy, who has convictions for stalking and sex crimes. Those crimes apparently involved women, and not that sex offenders always stick with female or male victims, but I don't know how often they cross over and pick victims of different sexes. At this point, I don't know if there's any connection at all between Dylan and Troy, except Dylan's association with Kurt. There's also been some focus on another man who helped on the farm. Along with Kurt, Don was also a man who had worked on the farm sometimes, and both men knew Dylan and his grandfather. Dylan's grandma asked the two men to go to the farm and check on Dylan when she hadn't heard back from him by Sunday. They went to the farm and reported back that Dylan's truck was at the RV and that the grain truck was in the shed. They said they did not see Dylan though. Some reports say that Don had recently been fired by Dylan, making people suspicious of him and questioning if he perhaps didn't do something to Dylan out of anger. But Dylan's mom says that that wasn't as big a deal as people have made it out to be. Don was fired around 6 weeks prior to Dylan's disappearance, and the separation was considered peaceful. Kurt has said that Don wasn't fired, but instead that he had come into some money and had simply decided he'd rather be fishing than doing farm work. Many who knew Don say that he would never harm Dylan. And then there's also Dylan's run-in with a strange man who was walking barefoot on a gravel road when he flagged Dylan down asking for a ride. Dylan suspected that the man was on drugs and said that he was acting erratically, and so he refused to give him a ride. The man then asked to use Dylan's cell phone, and Dylan let him do that. Dylan found the encounter strange enough that he mentioned it to his family. The man, whose name is Chase, was supposedly later in Montello asking about Dylan. After Dylan disappeared, the sometimes farm helper Kurt told the family that he believed Dylan was possibly being held by Chase in Montello. Kurt claims that the information came from a psychic. Police searched the building where Dylan was supposedly being held and found nothing. Chase has maintained that he had nothing to do with Dylan's disappearance and even provided police with an alibi. Unfortunately for Chase, he was arrested because he has an outstanding warrant unrelated to Dylan's disappearance. Dylan's mom has said that there is no way Dylan would have voluntarily left his farm and that he hadn't been experiencing any mental health issues. She said Dylan's biggest stress was getting his crop to grow. This kid, he is not a typical kid. He doesn't know how to play video games. He was born in the wrong generation. That farm was his life and he would never leave it. The dirt pile where the boots were found has been searched. The grain truck was searched, along with the RV, truck, and other buildings on the farm. A pond on the land was drained with nothing found there either. The surrounding area has been searched, some on foot, but also with drones and helicopters. Dylan's parents want to continue searching for their son, but are at a loss of where to continue to look. The reward for information on Dylan's case has been increased from $20,000 to $100,000. Investigators have stated that they intend to continue investigating Dylan's disappearance until they find out what has happened. If somebody is involved in Dylan's disappearance, they need to know we're not going to go away. If this takes months, if this takes years, we'll keep knocking on doors. Let's hope it doesn't take much longer to get an answer. Anyone with information should contact the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office at 435-723-5227. So guys, I think this update may have ended up being longer than the original video. There's been a lot more that's come out about Dylan's disappearance, although I'm sad to say, nothing that has led to an arrest or even the police naming a person of interest. What do you think happened to Dylan? I keep switching between something criminal and most likely murderous happening to him by someone who knew him, given how isolated his farm is, and so the odds are pretty slim that someone was randomly out there to do him harm, and that Dylan was out on his land and had some kind of accident. The area around Dylan's farm has many caves and abandoned mine shafts, so was he out there walking and is just in a place where he hasn't been found yet? Seems unlikely, but it is still on the list of possibilities. Let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time, stay safe and stay careful.